Welcome to the Amplified CEO with VC and serial entrepreneur Richard Stroupe.
Today's guest is David Reeser, founder and CEO of OpiAID, a groundbreaking company using artificial intelligence. David's innovative approach combines technology and healthcare to provide personalized solutions that support patients and providers in the fight against opioid use disorder.
So I'm really fascinated with your background in healthcare. Tell me a little bit more. How did you get involved in healthcare? Why has that become such a passionate idea for you in your business?
Yeah, so it started long before opioid. My passion for healthcare started when I was 3. So I was that little kid walking around the living room with the Fisher Price stethoscope around his neck,
Okay.
and the sphygmometer, thinking I was taking people's blood pressures when I was a toddler, So there was something in me, and I really think it's in our DNA on the Reeser side of the house. I think it's in our DNA to care for people. I believe that all of our gifts, this is not just myself, but everyone, is that we were all given special gifts, but they're not for us. They're meant to contribute to help the lives of other people. Our
Right.
gifts aren't meant for us. And my gift is being able to care for folks and being able to see around corners. And when I was 3, I was walking around the living room with a Fisher Price set, and I always wanted to be a physician from day one. It
What,
didn't quite play out that way, but
right. Was there anyone in your family? Was your mom or dad a surgeon, a doctor, a nurse, or any healthcare professional?
no, I mean, I had family members who worked in healthcare, but wasn't aware at the time that they were in healthcare. So there was no one around me or in my circle
Mm.
to influence that. It's just a desire that was in my heart to work in healthcare. Yeah, so it started at a very young age, and it went from there. I really believed that I was going to be a physician. So even as a kid growing up, I would read encyclopedias and learn about the human body and learn about diseases. And
Wow.
eventually, I went and got a license to be an EMT,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed that. I didn't like going backwards in an ambulance. Motion sickness is a real thing. And I learned pharmacy at a young age. I guess I was 16 or 17. I worked at a pharmacy and filled prescriptions. So I got to see, these meds are for these diseases. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Eventually, I went to x ray school. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but eventually I went to x ray school to learn how to do radiography. And I worked as an EMT part time. And then I also worked in a hospital filing basically x-ray files at
Okay.
night. So I had some really long days through college, but came out with no debt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked my way through school and eventually became an MRI technologist, did fluoroscopy in the operating room. I've seen a lot in healthcare.
Right.
hmm
Did you study for your MCATs? Or did you ever think about going to medical school at that point?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was going through x-ray school, I had this intimidation factor like in year 1 where I thought to myself, I don't know if I'm smart enough to go to medical school. This self doubt, which I don't
Right.
struggle with self doubt now. I questioned whether or not I was intelligent enough to get through medical school. And then my year 2, I started rotating with the medical school students and realized I know as much as a lot of these medical school
Right.
students. And then I was encouraged to go to medical school. By that time, I had met my wife though, and I had been broke for a long time, so I was ready to make a little bit of money. And just when I wanted to take my MCATs and really take that next step, my wife got pregnant. So
Okay.
I pretty much ended the journey as a physician, at least at the time.
Mhm.
Who knows? I don't put any limitations on the future. Something can happen. But I believe that the work that I'm doing now is going to impact far more people than I could have done individually. And
Right.
in my healthcare career, which spanned 13 years, I've cared for thousands of patients in every situation you can wrap your head around. And I've seen a lot, and it's really was a lot of fun. And now what I get to do now is really fun too.
It's very stressful. Like the environment's very stressful. I'm at.
The healthcare environment,
Yes.
it's stressful in the ways that may seem unlikely. I don't get stressed out by blood or by people being sick. I'm
Mhm.
stressed out by the fact that we have to treat people differently based on their insurance.
Mhm.
I'm stressed out by the fact that healthcare has been structured in a way that's 100 years outdated, and that people that need care and can't get access to the care that they need. And
Mhm.
and this is partly what inspired opioid. how do we help the most sensitive of our population? How do we do the lightest lift to make the greatest impact?
Hmm.
That's the part that stresses me out. But people being sick, like caring for people, that's not the stressful part. The
Right.
stress is the machine around it that just makes it difficult to do so in the most advantageous fashion.
So do you believe that the system that's set up to deliver the healthcare, as you described, is it the diagnosis that's the problem, or the facilitation of the service, or the insurance, or kind of in between? Like,
Yes.
where does it really kind of become complicated in your opinion?
uh, See, there are a lot of things in this world that are complicated. I like to try to reduce them to the smallest possible thing to make it really clear. I think that the challenge is that we've put profit before people.
The capitalistic aspect of healthcare delivery is
It's not just the delivery, it's the motivations. As an example, the hardest class that you take in medical school is pharmaceuticals,
mm,
like learning how to prescribe medications.
right,
That's the most difficult class.
right.
And the reason is because pharmaceutical companies have funded medical schools to teach them how to prescribe medications. So they largely fund the medical schools. So when the solution to every problem is prescribe medication or do surgery, we've got a problem,
Right.
you know? So the motivation is off because it's driven by profit. Medical devices that don't cost much. It costs $25 to take a chest x-ray.
Mm,
$25. But if I drive down to the hospital and ask to pay cash for a chest x-ray, it'd be like 600.
mhm,
Right? There's some things that are just broken and don't make sense. But at the end of the day, the hospital system, the way it's set up now, was set up to control infectious diseases. We don't have problems with infectious diseases, and we have problems with chronic illness now.
mhm,
So the hospitals in general, the healthcare delivery is archaic and is driven by greed, and it's hard to unravel it.
mhm,
But there are things that you can do to change, be specific, and drive change in niche areas that will move the pendulum. And
mhm.
that's what opiate is. We're taking the most sensitive of our neighbors and leveraging data in a meaningful way to bring them home at night.
Right.
And doing that, you're going to see the paradigm shift. And we just need others with a focused approach to go in and do the same.
Mhm.
Eventually things will move. But when you're moving a mountain, you got to do it a stone at a time. When you eat an elephant, it's a bite at a time.
Right. Right. So with AI implementing efficiencies and benefits, not only from the diagnosis, but the research and development, and even using wearable technology to do more predictive treatment, um, you would think that this industry that's plagued with issues and profit over purpose, as you described, could be something that we could all look forward to. Is this technology uplift?
Yes, technology definitely plays a role, but technology is just a tool. Technology makes things better, faster, and cheaper.
Hmm.
It's the way that you leverage that tool that gives it meaning.
Hmm.
A shovel is technology. Shovel makes it easier to dig a hole. You
Right.
can, dig a hole, plant a tree. That tree grows, it bears fruit, provides shade. Beautiful thing. It blessed a lot of people for decades, right?
Hmm.
Maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years. You can take that same shovel, walk over to your neighbor's house, and hit him over the head with it,
Right.
right?
Dual
So,
purpose.
yeah, dual purpose. So
Yeah.
it still comes down to motive.
Right.
So if we leverage technology in a meaningful way, we can drive tremendous outcomes,
Right.
or we could turn this into the next disaster.
Yeah.
We could, ruin the autonomy that we have, the freedoms that we have. We could leverage people's conditions or their tendencies for profit.
Hmm.
It's whose hands do they rest in and what decisions will you make now that you know you can do something. Just
Right.
because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. So you have this passion to help people, and that's one of the reasons you joined into the healthcare industry. Now we're sitting here, 2025, and with the abundance of all this new technology that's going to help shape or repurpose what I hope is the delivery of effective solutions in healthcare delivery going forward. So tell me a little bit about your business model and how you can use some of this new technology and how it's helping some of your patients.
So OpiAID is a data science company making the treatment of substance use disorder safer and more effective.
Okay.
That's a pretty big statement,
That is. Yeah.
especially when you know how serious substance use disorder really is and how difficult it is to treat this disease. So the why behind OpiAID is what's important because it doesn't matter how you do something or what you do until people understand your why.
Mhm.
You know, the why behind OpiAID is that we love our neighbors. We don't refer to anybody as an addict. There are no addicts at OpiAID. People are of infinite and inherent worth.
Mhm.
Their worth it has no beginning and no end, and they were born with it and can't be taken from them. So when you see people as a 10, you make different decisions. From a business standpoint, you make different decisions about what you're willing to do and not do and
Mhm.
how you apply technology. The true north behind OPA is our true north question. I'm big on keeping things simple, and having a true north question for all you entrepreneurs out there is a really good idea. The true north question at OPA is, will this help my neighbor?
Mhm.
Simply put, if I have to make a decision, particularly a difficult one, if I ask myself, will this help my neighbor? If the answer is no, I don't need to entertain it anymore.
Mhm.
And if it's yes, when? May not be right now. It might be when I hit a different milestone down the road. But the why is that we love our neighbors. And with that in mind, we want to see them have freedom from substance dependence. We want to see them have a meaningful life that they want to live,
Mhm.
you know, free from the shackles of addiction. But addiction is a disease. Substance use disorder is a disease. It's a chronic neurologic disease, and it deserves world-class solutions, just like we have for cancer and other diseases. You
Mhm.
know, it doesn't deserve stigma. It doesn't deserve shame because it's a disease. We don't make people feel bad for being diabetic or having high blood pressure. We just
Mhm.
deal with it. You
Right.
treat it. But what we do is we provide timely and actionable data to help support clinical decision making for patients who are in treatment for their substance use disorder. So we partner with clinics that provide medications for opioid use disorder. Typical medications are like methadone or buprenorphine
Mhm.
that are safe medications to help people who are addicted to or abusing heroin, as an example, fentanyl. And in this way, this is a scientifically proven way to help people achieve recovery from substance use disorder. However, retention in these programs is super poor.
Mhm.
I mean, only 1 out of 3 people actually gets a clinical benefit from this treatment because they just simply don't stick around long enough.
Wow.
1 out of 3.
What happens to the other two?
Oh,
They
great
just
question. They fall back into a cycle of relapse. You know, they land into 20-day programs that statistically don't work for many.
Is
They
that because the treatment doesn't work effectively, or they're just not committed, or they don't have the resources to go through?
The primary reason is that the clinicians lack timely and actionable data around how individuals are recovering,
Okay.
and that they don't have any personalized insight because many of the tools that have been created for treating substance use disorder are subjective or retrospective, whereas a lot of other diseases is predictive. Like with diabetes, as an example, you can
Mhm.
measure glucose levels right now,
Right.
right? So you know whether or not to give yourself insulin. But what if you couldn't do that and someone found you on the floor?
Right.
You know, that's the situation we have with substance use disorder, is that it's all retrospective. A lot of it's subjective surveys. It's not the level of precision and accuracy that we have with other diseases.
Mhm.
So that's one of the major problems with substance use disorder. So if we know based on data that if patients retain in treatment 6 months, 1 year, their lives look completely different. Their bodies completely different. But the national average is that only 1 out of 3 people benefit from MOUD care.
Okay.
And the other 2 out of 3, they land in emergency rooms. They land in 20-day programs, don't work, they die. You
Mhm.
know, in 2023, 112,000 of our neighbors in the United States alone passed away. That's like a 747 going down every
Right.
day. Literally every 5 minutes, somebody's overdosing in the
Right.
US,
Yeah.
right? So this is an epidemic.
Right.
That being the case, for those that are successful, they're successful after an average of 5 relapses over 8 years until it finally took. What does
Mhm.
your life look like after 5 relapses? Who's still around? What does your body look like?
Right.
We're done with it.
Mhm.
No more. So we're leveraging technology so that early on during the induction phase, the beginning phase, the first 30 days of their treatment, completely data driven,
Mhm.
timely and actionable, prevent relapses, improve the management of withdrawal. and get them the help they need when they need it. In doing this, if we're able to keep one more person in medications for opioid use disorder treatment, MOUD treatment, if we can keep them in the clinic 6 more months, 1 out of 3 people, we will change the world. And already what we've learned at OpiAID has changed hard science. But going back to our business model, just speaking to that a bit, we partner with these clinics that provide this level of care, and we extract the data within their EHR, specific data points like urine toxicology, appointment cadence. We look at PHQ-9, which is a measurement of depression, GAD-7, which is a measurement of anxiety, and we combine these data points and apply machine learning to that and start to put together an understanding of, is someone trending towards recovery or are they trending towards relapse? And then we apply something that's very unique at OpiAID, and that's leveraging raw biometric data. So if you can see my watch here, I'm wearing a Samsung Galaxy watch. This is actually a Watch 4. We use Watch 4 through Watch 7. And what we're able to do with these watches is collect raw biometric data from the watch, and we are able to quantify the level of withdrawal someone is experiencing. We can identify withdrawal, we can quantify it, and then we can also identify the acute use of opioids. The purpose of this, and the reason that it's so important, is that this gives us a real-time understanding, particularly during the beginning stages of treatment, of when people are experiencing these difficulties, so that physicians can make different decisions around medication and treatment and compliance. That's going to significantly change outcomes for people in treatment. And now we're working on algorithms specific to stimulant use disorder and alcohol use disorder, so that this can be a source of truth and real-time insight, remote physiologic monitoring. It's called RPM.
Okay.
And that's really the business model, is let's extract data that's already available, provide data that was never there, offer machine learning and insights, timely insights that will lead to better, more data-driven decisions, interventions that will prevent relapses, save lives, and ultimately bring more of our neighbors home at night.
Right.
And this RPM, remote physiologic monitoring protocol, or CPT billing, is available today, often used by cardiologists and nephrologists, other chronic diseases, but has largely not been applied to substance use disorder. However, we have a very unique use case for this, and we've been working with payers and the federal government to ensure that this technology is not only available but billable for clinics, so that when patients get better, clinics make more money and payers save money. This is one of those few trifectas where everyone's on board, because a neighbor who is stabilized in care often costs the payers $40,000 less to insure per year, while the average clinic will make nearly $900,000 in additional revenue, and our neighbors are coming home.
Right.
This is a win-win-win.
So the data you collect is from wearable technology, most of it.
And electronic health records.
Okay, so you're importing electronic health records, and you're picking up biomarker data from individuals using a watch.
Correct.
And based on that information, you can then determine if they're trending towards recovery or relapse.
Yes, the EHR data will show you the trending, but the biometric data is real-time insight where I can tell you that something is happening.
Okay, so if I was a patient that needed care,
Yes.
and do I have to like download an application on my smartwatch to register my information into your system, or how
Yeah,
does that
so
work?
this is just an off-the-shelf device,
Okay.
but when it leaves the factory now, when it leaves the building, it has our technology embedded in it. So for them, it's the same watch that they're used to if they've worn a smartwatch. Just
Okay.
in the background, there's a separate data feed that pulls that raw data and sends it through LTE or Wi-Fi to our cloud servers, where it gets transformed and then displayed within the dashboard.
Okay.
So it's simply put on the watch, but we offer these watches free of charge. Like it's offered as part of the RPM package. So when they go to the clinician, their physician would say, "Look, John, I know that you're really serious about wanting this to be the last time that you have to go through this program.
Mhm.
The last time you were here, we didn't have this, but we have something now called OpiAID. And what this is technology that can help support your recovery and give us better understanding of how to make sure that that you get the best care possible.
Mhm.
And it's completely up to you whether you want to do this or not, because truly you can only help those that really want to help. But there are so many who are just desperate,
Right.
right? But this is a technology that we are seeing a lot of promise in. And if you agree to be a part of this, not only is this going to help shape your recovery, but the data and what we learned in this process is going to change recovery for people you don't even know.
Right.
Like you are literally making, and it's true, because the nature of machine learning and what we're learning at OpiAID, we know that every data feed that enters that database is making the AI smarter
Mhm.
and more sensitive so they can help more people in a more personal way.
Right.
So they're not only contributing to their own recovery, they're helping somebody else come
Others.
home. It's
Exactly.
true.
Now, does the patient pay for this service, or do you get reimbursed by insurance? How does that work?
Yeah. So this is a B2B SaaS model.
Okay.
We sell directly to the clinic. They pay us per patient per month.
Okay.
And then while it's not proven to be, we're still working out the CPT coding with clinics to make sure that they can reimburse for it. Ultimately, it's the clinics pay for it. They offer it to their patients, our neighbors, and then they bill CPT coding to be able to get reimbursed plus.
Okay.
So it's for them, it's a new vertical, and it's financially advantageous. Plus, they see their patients retained in care, which adds to the bottom line. For each patient in North Carolina retained in care, it's worth about $8,400 a month to the
Okay.
clinic. And
So
right now,
they're incentivized. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, the folks that go into this line of care do so because they are truly passionate.
Mhm.
You'll see very few people work within substance use disorder or psychiatry unless they truly love it, because psychiatry has terrible reimbursements, financially not advantageous. If you have the choice between that and being a surgeon, no brainer. If finances are the reason you make the decision. And people who work within substance use disorder do so because they truly care. So they want people to get better. They want more options to see people succeed. So they're encouraged just to have a tool that gives them hope and gives them more data.
Right.
But then it can be financially advantageous also.
So from the clinic's point of view, are they receiving enough funding to service their neighbors and patients at the state level, the federal level? Like, what are some of the challenges that they're facing?
That's a very fair question. And it depends on the type of clinic that's offering the care. So the care is divided up in two schools of thought. You're either an OTP, outpatient treatment program. Those are the only programs in the United States that are allowed to prescribe methadone, which is a very common medication.
Mhm.
Our OTPs, they're typically nonprofit and they get their funding through STAMPSHA. So it's grant dollars through the federal government. With those programs, the money is coming from the federal government. It's kind of like a guaranteed paycheck, and we bake it into the business model that it just makes sense for them and they can kind of structure it into their finances. Those sales cycles take a while. And then there's OBOTs, which are considered outpatient based opioid treatment centers. And that's very much fee for service, very much CBT. It's just like any traditional healthcare practice. And for those groups, that's something that we can implement in pretty fast. But I would say in general, there's not enough funding for the treatment of substance use disorder, largely because it wasn't treated as a real disease for a long time. A lot of stigma, a lot of misunderstanding, some folks who had really goodwill that did some things that really didn't help the industry. But all in all, it was largely overlooked because there wasn't a lot of profit to be had. And therefore, they didn't make it profitable to enter the market either. But that has significantly changed. And the tailwinds that are coming as a result of this and a deeper understanding of the downstream effects of not treating this when you can have become incredibly evident to federal government, to the payers, to everyone alike, so that this is becoming a beautiful industry to be in from a business perspective. Reimbursements are totally changing. The laws are completely falling in line with making recovery a priority.
Yeah.
And we were doing it before anybody thought it was sexy or interesting or financially advantageous.
Mhm.
So it's such a time as this.
Right. Is there any political leanings, like there's some political party better than the other, or do you feel like the new administration might actually help create more of an impact?
So I believe that this is one of the few topics that there's bipartisan agreement on. Everyone's been affected. Dependence on substances, it doesn't have a face. It can look like anybody, it can look like me, it can look like you. And for that reason, because it's no respecters of persons or how much money is in your wallet, everyone has been affected in some way. That being the case, we have absolutely no difficulty with Republicans or Democrats or any other party with supporting these efforts. Now, they all obviously have different ideas of how it can be done, but there's a unified front on wanting to do something. And that's enough to bring the people to the table and do something that's going to have impact. So we've gotten a significant amount of political support. And in fact, some of the work that I'm doing with a nonprofit that I belong to, I work with a group called Breaking Barriers. It's 6 different companies all working within innovation around substance use disorder, and we're a political action committee. So we lobby Congress, we talk to congressmen and senators and help shape the laws in such a way, or working to help shape the laws to make it more fair, more accessible, data driven, more effective, more reasonable, because barriers are a real thing. But yeah, we don't really have difficulty on the political front, although there are some challenges specifically around the laws regarding data and the treatment of substance use disorder that's actually hindered care. That's unfortunate and likely to change.
Is that just from the protection, like HIPAA type security of information?
That's
or-
correct. Yeah. So there's HIPAA, which is, the Health Information Portability Act, and that's specific to anything healthcare. But within substance use disorder and behavioral health, we have a different level of compliance that we have to adhere to, and it's called 42 CFR Part 2. And with that level of compliance, it can hinder even physicians getting access to the data they need to be able to properly care for someone.
Right.
So some of that needs to change in order to streamline care and not have so many cracks that people can fall into.
Right. Well, it sounds like it's a very hot topic, as far as just embracing technology in healthcare and making it more affordable and creating more custom treatment programs for individuals. So you collect the information. So you wrote your own application that can do machine learning analysis. Can you explain a little bit about your tech stack? How does that work on the back end?
Yeah. Fortunately, I'm not a developer. Interestingly enough, I probably on the onset of OpiAID was the least likely person to start this company.
Oh, okay. I have to hear this story. How did you form the company? What was the aha moment?
Yeah, and we can come back to this thing because
Yeah.
it's actually pretty fascinating. So, yeah, long time in healthcare, delivering care. Then I got recruited by a startup that ultimately failed, but it was in healthcare. It gave me a taste for startup.
Okay.
Came to Wilmington, originally from Pennsylvania. Came to Wilmington and was a contractor helping other healthcare companies bring products to market because I understood how to sell and I understood healthcare. So
Right.
that was helpful. Ultimately started an IT company, built and sold here in Wilmington, over 2.5 years. My business partner, Stan, wonderful guy. We built this IT company, sold it, and then I got my feet wet in being a CEO. And then there was OpiAID. The genesis of OpiAID was simply this. I saw substance use in my family. I saw tragedy in my community, and I was moved to action. And it kind of felt like I was looking out into the street and I saw a child about to get hit by a car. And it's like nobody else sees it, but you do. So you have the option now to turn your head and keep walking, or risk it and try to save that child before you both get hit. And that's what I did. So sold OpiAID, put all my money out, completely jumped in, all kinds of risk, just because it felt that important. And ultimately, this was a download from God. Like he literally told me, love your neighbor. And I'm like, I got to understand a little bit more what that looks like.
Right.
But slowly but surely, like I was getting downloads of things I shouldn't understand. I knew nothing about data science, nothing about it. I had absolutely no idea what data science was. I knew nothing about software development, nothing about wearables. I know healthcare technology. I know healthcare, but I knew nothing about wearables. And I knew nothing about starting a life science company. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
What was the IT company that you were working with?
It's called IT Works, Cloud Infrastructure for Attorneys in Local Government. So it was Workspace as a service. We basically took all their software and programs, we put in a cloud, 42 levels of compliance, and then they were able to access their files and software from anywhere in the world on any device. So it was like a Citrix on steroids at a fraction of the cost.
Okay.
My co-founder was an IT genius, and I was good at sales and solving problems, getting it done efficiently. So
So were you
worked out
able
real well.
to lever that experience
Of
and
course.
go back to your healthcare roots, kind of combine
Yeah,
the
it was
two?
a mixing of the 2, but there was
Yeah.
so much unknown. If I were to do like a landscape analysis, in the 4 quadrants, this was
Mhm.
definitely not in the upper right type of company that I should have been starting.
Right.
Yeah, it just wasn't. But here I am, right? And the thing is, I just what I needed at just the right time would always come through. And the
Right.
message was always super clear. We started out with a clear why. We didn't, move from that. And then we started writing grants early to better identify where the opportunities are and get the validation we needed as a young startup. Validation is really important, particularly in life science.
Mhm.
So the genesis was, I watched suffering in my family, watched suffering in my community, and said no more. We started this because we want to see people come home at night, and I realized too the levers of healthcare on the only meaningful way to grow is to solve a problem first, and to make sure that it's profitable for clinics to offer it, and that it can be meaningfully introduced into the market.
Right.
So, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting because personal experience usually drives behavior and experience similar things. And it calls to action, and your heart will tell you exactly where to go. So
hmm
that's a great story.
So speaking from the data science, you mentioned stack. Like, what's our data stack? We build off of GCP. We can be cloud agnostic. We just like GCP. Google's been a great partner to me for a long time. We use them in my previous business, and we use a lot of cloud compute.
Right. I'm sure.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, build off of GCP. We've got a really flexible platform. We collect the same data points, but present them different ways depending on the clinic and the clinical workflow. And we've got some really sophisticated algorithms running in the background. Most of it's convolutional neural networks. Some of them are liquid networks, which for folks who are listening to this, even if you're into AI, often folks don't know what a liquid neural network is.
Mhm.
That's like the latest, greatest. But being able to personalize the algorithm to the individual,
Mhm.
that's a pretty special thing, especially as they're recovering, and being able to generalize across skin tones so that the insights that you share are equitable across the
Mhm.
board. Didn't matter what you look like, what tone your skin is, if you're male or female, you should be able to get accurate data.
Mhm.
So some of the extra labor that we've gone through to ensure that this would work for all and not just the ones that look like us,
Mhm.
it was egregiously difficult,
Yeah.
but it was important.
How long did it take for you to build that?
I mean, we're still building it because with a
Well, it's learned, it's
with a
evolving.
network,
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
MVP, a year,
Okay.
to get it to where it is now, including the algorithms, 3.5 years. We've got a massive data set. A lot of the inherent value of opioid isn't even our technology; it's our data
Correct.
and our IP. So we've got 7 billion rows of data. To my knowledge, I think we've got the largest biometric data set in the world on opioid use disorder.
Mm.
So it's massive, and we're learning so much on it.
Has this been a source of academic research? Like, have there been other like PhD type work in this field that you were able to lever?
Yeah, there's been a significant amount of work, and we've created a lot of it too,
Mhm.
which is kind of wild when I think about it that way. But there are 3 students at UNCW who are getting their PhDs as a result of the work at OpiAID. So they
Wow,
came
that's
and they did
impressive.
work at OpiAID and developed new
Yeah.
technology that didn't exist.
Right.
And now they're getting their PhDs, and they're going to be the expert on it. In fact, I think the totals up to like 34 students have come through OpiAID through UNCW now.
Is that right?
And
Wow.
we've had some from Duke and Boston University and UNC Chapel Hill. So we've offered internships as part of our clinical trials and open up lab time. So a lot of these students who are going out to be clinicians, they got their first experience at OpiAID,
Mhm.
which is really cool. And some of them have stayed, and they're getting their PhDs, and they're becoming part of the team. So this has been homegrown here in Wilmington, and still will always be in Wilmington. And we've definitely advanced the learning and have benefited from the research that other folks have done significantly.
Okay.
And we've done a fair amount of funded research as well. And, we've written 5 SBIRs. We've won 3. We're in the midst of a SBR fast track right now, moving in phase 2, which is an FDA clinical trial. We're
Right.
about to start in April.
Yeah, that's huge. Phase 2 is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is
Right.
fun, but this
Yeah.
is only one. This will be our de novo, FDA de novo, and I've got another mark coming right after that, a 510K that will be right after that de novo is approved
Right.
or cleared.
What originally brought you to Wilmington? I don't want to be hop back and forth.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
hey, I
Yeah.
context switch. It's the
Yeah.
ADD
Yeah.
CEO. Yeah, we
Yeah.
got a context switch. So what brought me to Wilmington was my wife in a car. She said, "Get in." Literally, that's what happened. She was like, "I'm tired of living in Pennsylvania. It snows too much." I was like, "I can't argue with that." My requirements were really simple. I need to be 15 minutes from an airport, no more than 30. I want to live by the beach, and I don't want to shovel snow anymore. So we spent like a week in LA, a week in Florida, and 4 days in Wilmington. And we were like, "Yep, this is where we're moving." And there was no
Yeah.
turning back. And I'll tell you what, this is so great because I've raised my girls here now. We came in 2016, and I can't imagine anything else being home. I really love Wilmington. I love my city.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area for sure.
I see Wilmington as a city on a hill. I see it as an opportunity to show the rest of the country how you can get things right.
Hmm.
I really believe that. We're messing up along the way too, but I think Wilmington is in a really special place where we still have an opportunity to shape what it's going to look like in the future.
Hmm.
I want to be a part of making that a better
Right.
place to be.
And has the startup ecosystem been beneficial for you and in your journey and with OpiAID?
Oh yeah, for those that are on camera, this is one of the organizations. I brought my coffee mug today that has really been incredibly supportive of us. NC Idea. There's been a number of organizations. I can rattle some off. For
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
so Network for Entrepreneurs Wilmington, Jim Roberts out there,
We,
probably going to be listening into this.
yeah. He's a
Unbelievable.
huge fan of yours, by the way.
Yeah, and he's been such a tremendous support in the early days when I really didn't know what it meant to be an entrepreneur, to be a standout CEO. I didn't know. I really didn't. I was growing into it. He helped me in those early days with coaching, getting me connected to resources, walking me in doors that I couldn't have walked in myself.
Mm.
And he accelerated the process by leveraging social capital in a way that wasn't happening. When I came to Wilmington, I got a lot of God bless yous and bless your hearts, and I was like, everyone's blessing me. It was tough because I'm this fast talking guy from the north that's used to working 80 hours a week,
Hmm.
and suddenly when everyone leaves at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, I'm still working. Like, you start looking like the oddball,
Hmm.
but Jim recognized that the heart and the hustle was there and he wanted to help me. He did tremendously, which led to funding, which led to SBIRs. He introduced me to folks that helped us get our first grants in motion, understand what an SBIR even was. And now here we are, 3.5 million in non-dilutive funding later, almost $1 million in angel investments, and we're closing contracts that are 8 figures,
Hmm.
or 8, 7, and it's a totally different world. And I don't know that this could have happened anywhere else in the country. I really don't.
Hmm.
I mean, all things are possible. I don't create limitations. The only limitations are the ones we put on ourselves. I think statistically speaking, I think it would have been very difficult to replicate this in any city in the fashion we did.
Hmm.
But Jim Roberts, UNCW-CIE, Cape Fear Community College, and the folks that run the Small Business Center, NC Idea, their funding, NC Biotechnology Center provided us loans, support, coaching. We won the NC Pioneer contest. We won grants through NC Idea. We won some funding through UNCW as well. All the things they've done for us. I mean, I really believe we have so much to give back now because we've been blessed and taken care of so well by the state and the ecosystem here. And I don't feel like you think, believe, or know, right? In that
Right.
order. I know we have a lot to give back. So that this is part of that.
Hmm.
I didn't do this podcast because I wanted glory or anything like that. I'm not interested in that. My ego died a long time ago. I'm hoping that someone hears this and is inspired to take a risk or to feel comfort in the fact that they're not the only one on the struggle bus, that there's something on the other side of this that's better than what you're walking through.
Right.
But the struggle is part of the journey. And if you can find joy in the desert, you can rejoice on the mountain too.
Hmm.
You got to learn to find comfort in the uncomfort of it all. And in doing that, you learn a lot because pain's got a lot to teach you. But you should also know that if you're in Wilmington or if you're in North Carolina, you probably have the best ecosystem in the country for being able to take an idea and see it come to life, because until you can see it in your head, you're never going to hold it in your hand.
Right.
But there are a lot of places you can be where it'll remain an idea
Right.
without the resources,
Yeah.
time, talent, and treasure to be able to bring that to fruition.
Right. That's great that Jim has been such a beneficial force in your journey, and that you've taken part into the whole ecosystem of the different organizations that are helping small business, which
Yeah.
is it's great to hear.
Thank you. Shout out to Jim Roberts. Thank you. Appreciate you.
So tell me about your team.
Yes.
So when you had this idea to form the business, and you went through an MVP stage, did you tap your former co-founder of your IT company? Did he assist you in creating some of these early business models?
Yeah, and I can't take credit for OpiAID. OpiAID was born out of a desire to see our neighbors come home at night, and it wasn't just David Reeser. There were a number of people at the table. In the early days, we were bringing stakeholders from all over the community to talk about the problem. We didn't know what the solution was even going to look like. We wanted to understand the problem. So Stan helped make OpiAID a reality, and a number of other folks too. Like it couldn't have happened otherwise, but it was all from the same sincere desire. So that we did leverage the insights from many people, police officers, clinicians, people who are in recovery. Let's understand what's happening in our community. This was always for our backyard, for Wilmington, because you may not know this, but 11.6% of our working population are misusing or abusing opioids in the city. That's number one in the nation. That's not something you want to be number one in.
So wait, Wilmington has the number one opiate abuse?
The number one, there are 11.6% of our working population is misusing or abusing an opioid. That's number one out of any city in the United States.
Wow. I didn't know that. Huge.
And that's an unfortunate fact. And that being the case, we leaned on that lean startup methodology principle and said, let's understand this. Let's work out a lean canvas and walk through these stakeholders and find out the texture of this challenge.
Why do you think Wilmington has that issue? Like based on some of your anecdotal data collection.
Yeah, this is a bit anecdotal because it's hard to put your finger exactly on it, but I can give you some bullet points.
Sure.
So one, we're a college town that tends to drive more substances into a city. We're the end of I-40. We're a port city, so things can come in, come out really fast. We've got a huge divide between those that have and those that have not. Huge divide.
So inequality.
And then that backs into the food deserts and lack and education and those tensions that are created in and within that. But those are some of the reasons why. There are others, but those are some of the reasons why. But it's also the reason to be so hopeful because we are an affluent community as well who genuinely cares. And we have Coastal Horizons and other amazing providers here who have their heart completely committed to supporting our neighbors. Like we could be such a beacon of hope for the rest of the country. And it is literally the perfect scientific test bed for making things better in a way that is, you can create a blueprint and copy and paste it somewhere else for the same reason. It's like a dome. It's almost like you put a digital dome over the city and what you learn here can be copied almost anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. It's very representative, clean cross sections across community. It's really interesting.
You mentioned, inequality. Is it a lack of industry that's driving some of the choices that individuals make? Like trying to peel the onion back a little bit more.
Oh yeah, we can peel this all the way back to there's no more layers left.
Yeah.
Here's my thought, just to keep things simple, is that everyone needs two things. They need a purpose and they need a hope. And coming from a kid from a poor street, where we were poor, but I was broke. Broke is a temporary state of not having. Poor is a mindset, right? I knew I was broke. When you're walking around, your feet are poking out of your shoes and you're walking to school covered in rain, soaking wet to the bone, you smell like a cigarette. Yeah. People who are walking through life that way, they lack hope. And when you also don't know why you were put here or what am I going to do and what's special about me that I can contribute to the world, you lack purpose, right? And in communities where you don't have a strong education system because the way that the city was drawn up, education is poor. You go to lunch and it's pizza and chicken nuggets every day. So you don't have good nutrition. And our bodies are being manipulated by all the chemicals that have been put in it because cigarette companies started becoming food companies. And suddenly the environment and the water is toxic. You don't have access to quality education, right? And on top of that, there's food deserts where you live. So basically you can walk and get a bag of Cheetos or go to Wendy's. but you can't go and get fresh salad. Like the incentives are just upside down. So what you have unhealthy, unmotivated, uneducated, lack of hope, lack of purpose.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter where you live. That's a recipe for desperation.
Hmm.
And people sometimes seek medications and opioids to escape from a lack of purpose, to escape from a lack of hope,
You,
and and it happens in other ways too. But that is one of the reasons, if you were to pinpoint it back to inequality, that's what I would say. But I would argue that people who are wealthy are the most lost
mhm,
because they feel like they have it all together,
mhm.
and then sometimes the substance use could be recreational or accidental. So it can happen in different ways, but inequality, lack of hope, lack of purpose, regardless of who you are, will create an environment where bad things happen.
Do you feel the drug companies also target some of the inequality markets around the country and, try to plus up their own drug sales? 'Cause I mean, I have friends who are pharmacists. I have friends who are drug sales. I can kind of see both sides of the coin. I understand the whole BPM market. So when you talk about the business side, it definitely does create a major impact on both sides of the coin. But what fault does the drug company have in some of this? Because obviously they are incentivized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely incentivized. So let me answer that by putting something else out there. I think in life, particularly in business, you find what you look for. You know, I say that because I feel like it's really easy to point the fingers at the pharmaceutical companies. Very easy to point the fingers at the pharmaceutical companies and other folks, but I tend to want to gravitate toward hope and towards solutions. I do believe that the pharmaceutical companies play a humongous role in creating this epidemic without question, and it's
Mhm.
undeniable at this point. I mean, when HBO is making specials about this, and there's TV series coming out just laying out everything that the Purdue Pharma had done, they
Mhm.
knew they were taking advantage of people who are both wealthy and poor, all the same. It was all about profit. And the United States is the only country where you see pharmaceutical companies advertising their drugs on TV with cute little taglines, and little cartoons because they contribute 55% of the revenue that's given to FDA every year. So of course you're going to have manipulation in the healthcare system when the food companies own, the folks that tell us what's safe to eat, and the drug companies own the organization or pay the majority of the revenue into the organization that approves medications and medical devices and procedures
Mhm.
for United States citizens. You're of course going to see corruption. Right. So yes, that was absolutely happening. And there's been a lot of beautiful change and a lot of beautiful change coming with the new administration, cleaning up a lot of that nonsense.
Mhm.
hmm Yeah, but
That's
pharmaceutical plants play a huge role and things haven't gone sideways.
right. Does the bipartisan BPM reform, you think that'll help reshape some of the expectations and
I guess the proof is in the pudding. Like I don't get excited about deals that we close until I see cash hit the bank.
right?
So like I've heard a lot of good things and I've read over a lot of these proposals and they look very promising.
Mhm.
Truth is ideas are cheap. Action is what I measure. We gotta measure the say-do ratio
Right.
of these folks. So let's sit back and hope for the best, prepared for downside risk of it not quite planning out that
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. So what other markets are you currently operating in? So Wilmington is a huge market. Are you nationwide, Southeast? Where exactly are you?
Yeah. So we're early in our commercialization. We have clinics live here in North Carolina, in Alaska, which I'm going to Alaska February 28th. I'm speaking at an AI conference in Alaska and visiting one of our clinics. It's going to be very cold, y'all.
Uh,
Super cold. And then we're going to begin work in West Virginia this year, Arizona, thinking of all the states, Nevada, Florida potentially. That's a potential. It's not a done deal yet. But yeah, there's a number of states. We'll be in 6 different states before the end of the year.
yeah, typically markets that have similar conditions to Wilmington, I imagine. Workforce that has a high dependency on opiate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a general formula, and it's like concentration of the problem laws in that state, reimbursement in those states, sort of the acceptance of solutions like this overall. Some of the larger players, where their central regions and their footprint. Our specialty are these MOUD clinics, particularly of some scale,
Mhm.
because they have an easier time operationally deploying something like this and having to pull their systems together. Whereas a lot of these smaller clinics, they don't really have the runway to land the jet,
Mm,
you know?
right. So what are your sales looking like?
They're not looking as high as I want them to be, but an entrepreneur,
Right. Yeah.
always wants to go faster.
Yeah.
And so we have about 1.5 million in contract right now.
Okay.
But like I said, we just getting going. Those are just early deals that we got into motion. My goal by the end of 2025 is to have 10 million in ARR. And then just kind of speaking with positive mind frame, because you'll find what you look for. Like I said earlier, I'm believing that we'll have about 10 patents in motion by the end of the year, maybe 11, that will be close to submitting our data for our trial for some sort of early approval on our FDA trial. And we'll have about 10 million in ARR by the end of the year. And I hope to grow my team by at least 30% for some of the things that we're looking to do.
How big is your team right now?
So it's a hard question to answer because so many people are part of research that don't fall into the commercial side of the house.
Right.
I have some people who are PRN, some that are full-time, some that are fractional. In total, we're 33, but it's not day-to-day that large. There are 9 individuals who are part of our
Full-time.
core,
Yeah.
day-to-day team.
Payroll.
Payroll, exactly. The ones you have to make sure that the check's going to clear,
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, we have a large team, and some of these folks, like I said, are fractional or hourly and rotate in and rotate out. So we're a small team.
Right. And you've raised, you said 3 million to date?
We've raised 3.5 in non-dilutive funds through grants and awards, and then we've raised 740,000 in dilutive angel funding. That's
Okay.
right.
Is that through the Whale Fund through Jim? Or?
Almost entirely through Whale, and then a couple other things that kind of came through.
Okay. And are you going to be actively fundraising this year, or do you have a safe that you're raising money off of? Or
Oh, I'd love to know if anyone's raising with the safe anymore.
everybody I talk to is using safes.
If they're getting any money though, is
Yeah.
the real question.
I know we talked about like the aerospace, space companies are using, safes.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, that's a philosophical question for me because I think a safe note is very one-sided. No offense to any of my entrepreneurs out there doing safe notes. God bless you if you can raise it that way. Go for it. So we were planning on raising at the end of Q1, but it looks like we might be taking an investment potentially with a VC group that we're working with right now that approached us.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they're like, we recognize what you all are doing and we want in, which is cool. We're not searching for it. We were planning on starting to look out once we got our trial stood up, having things in place and closing at least one more sale. But they came searching for us, and we're in a due diligence process with them right now. And this is incredibly strategic because this is not money for us. This is way more than money. We're going to be getting some significant new team members out of this that could really propel us forward and opening up new markets. I mean, this is a really significant one. If we continue down this path and it's a good fit on both sides, this will be significant, very significant.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Explain a little bit about your non-dilutive funding, because I know talking to inspiring entrepreneurs, most people think bootstrap, have to go borrow money, angel investing or friends and family. But a lot of folks really don't pay attention to the non-dilutive grants because of the exercise of applications and the process. And some people don't really understand how to even get started with SIBRs or other type of grants. So if you can explain a little bit about how you got into that and what, little nuggets or lessons that you can give others to follow your footsteps.
Well, I love this question because it's incredibly practical. In business, it's really hard to know everything that's going to happen. And there's not a step-for-step guide for getting it completely right. Here are the 100 steps to have a successful business. If it was like that, we'd have a much higher success rate.
Mm-hmm.
But we always know the next right thing to do, the next right thing. And as a startup founder, particularly in North Carolina, we have these wonderful organizations that offer up these small but very important grants that you can apply for, like an NC idea. They have something that's called, they have the seed grant, which is a $50,000 grant, but then they have a $10,000 grant that you can apply for. And that $10,000 grant could be a humongous game changer for a new startup. One, not only are they going to learn the value of writing a grant, be able to think about every part of your business, but you're going to get extremely valuable insight from grant reviewers who really, truly understand what it takes to be successful, that will sow a seed in you and help you grow in certain areas you may not know that you even needed or had a muscle there that needed to be strong to be in startup world. And then you get that first point of validation, which can be a huge confidence lift. And particularly with the NCI idea grant, is that you get a boot camp when you win that $10,000 grant. And those that win that have a very high likelihood of winning a seed grant for $50,000 down the road as they gain more traction. You can also meet other partners that can help you on this journey, because it's, you can go by yourself and go fast, but you can go with others and go far. And OpiAID is definitely a living, breathing example that this company would be dead already if it was just me. But because of such a beautiful team that we have around us, we're going really far. Speaking to other grants, you start out with these smaller grants, get some small wins, get some momentum from those wins, propel them into something like an NC Pioneer and win $20,000 or $100,000 with that, and then work your way up to an SBIR. SBIRs are very challenging, but you learn to run a 5K before you run a marathon.
Right.
Right. An SBIR, they're difficult to win. Often the success rate for your first one, less than 20%. Take 3 months to write. It's not a small feat. But for those that are successful and you get a good program officer, this could be non-dilutive funding for the life of your company.
Mm-hmm.
And more important than the money, because an SBIR phase one can be between $150,000 and $300,000 in funding to basically test your idea,
Right.
get a working concept. And a phase two, which is finishing the technology and commercialization, can be between 1 million and 3.5 million, potentially, if you can get all the add-ons, which is really significant. But you can keep writing these things. I've talked to companies like Babies won 25 million in SBIR grants. Why not? And I know other folks that have done that as well. It's great for validation, for understanding where the market's going. You're in the room where these things are happening. And now, interestingly enough, another sort of, you would never believe it if it wasn't true, is I don't have a PhD. I'm not an MD. I'm a fairly intelligent guy. I'm a reviewer for the National Institute of Health. So like the best researchers in the country who are writing the cutting edge grants about tomorrow's technology, I review them. Like I'm helping craft where that money goes and what the future looks like for innovation in this industry. That being the case, I probably have a unique perspective on this. And I really do believe that grants are a great way first to get validation.
Mm-hmm.
Not first, but point one is validation. Point two is understanding where you need to grow and to grow in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And three, to work your way up to having officially in life science a validated instrument, and a strong commercialization model that you can build off of, like a strong foundation to build a strong company off of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think that grants are a win for a lot of companies, and not every company. And I would always prefer to close the sale than get investment money in the early days. And the only reason I say that is that I think there are certain things you have to learn about business that entrepreneurs today forget, which is that you can't just live on investor money or hope for a grant dollar that may or may not come in. Because you write a grant today, you're not going to see that money in SBIR for a year. How do I close something today that someone's willing to pay me for?
Right.
Where I can build value and get strong and build these muscles and understand delivery. Am I in the right market? Test something, for gosh sake. Help your investors out by closing some sales and understanding what it takes to be successful and who you need on your team. Not just about grants, not just about getting investment dollars. Let's go close some sales.
Let's get some traction. Right.
Yeah, and have confidence about talking about your product and solving problems. And yeah that's it.
Yeah. That's been great. Yeah. I had no idea you were doing reviews.
This is something new for me. And that's another thing too. You always have to be growing.
Yeah.
At least you should have a growth mentality, not just in your business, but personally.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love what you put out there with regards, you should spend a third of your time doing things that are uncomfortable and moving it to a place of real uncomfort. Growth only happens when we're uncomfortable, but you shouldn't be so uncomfortable all of the time.
Right.
There is something to that. And actually, I wanted to ask you, how do you balance so much time being uncomfortable and driving milestones while at the same time not physically pushing yourself too far? Because I can tell you, like, I have a tendency where when I turn on, I can be on for 18 hours.
Mhm.
But my body has told me now, David, you're not 25 anymore.
Right.
Like, I'll let you get
Yeah.
away with this for so long, but not too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
What's the barometer for you when you know that you're spending that time being uncomfortable, driving milestones, but know like where to start to step on the gas pedal, park the car, and then get back in tomorrow?
Well, before you go down the path of choosing whatever growth model you're looking for, obviously there's an outcome or target that you're trying to obtain. Sometimes you get into it, like you mentioned, and you just become blind and you just keep working. But you have to understand it's not just about the destination, about the journey. It's about understanding how you create the discipline to undergo some of those growth models that you push yourself towards. Of course, with kids and everybody else in your life, they'll tell you too, hey, dad, come downstairs or time to go.
Yeah.
Otherwise you could sit there all day and, with your head down and just completely just entranced. It's tough. It's tough because, like you mentioned, the older you get, the body will tell you as well. So there's markers. Either people in your life or your body itself will say, "Hey, time to go." Because I'm still trying to get over something I call it over the holidays. But what's been, in your opinion, some of the most challenging aspects of starting your business through this journey? 'Cause it sounds like you've gone through the whole growth model of the grant writing process, and you've been very successful with that. And that's something most entrepreneurs never experience. So I'm happy that you've got that experience, something that you can completely leverage in the future. But now that you're transitioning into the VC model, do you find more challenging, more opportunities, or do you see things going forward?
So I think the greatest challenge is in the beginning when you tell your wife that you're going to sell one business that is like actually growing really well to start a new business that may not commercialize for years. And we're going to spend our money to make sure that it's successful. That's a challenging conversation. It is. And my wife knows that once I put my hand on something, I don't walk away.
Mm,
So she knows one way or another, I'm either going to die trying or that mountain will move. So I think she got a little scared and then she said, okay, deep breath, it's going to be all okay. That's the first challenge. And now that we're past the, something's going to go wrong situation, like, okay, breathe deep, everything's going to be fine. The new challenge is that you have to be prepared for your business on the outside to maybe look the same, but you're fundamentally creating a new machine.
mm,
With venture capital and with scaling, certain roles even on teams that, need to be professionalized. Whereas it was whoever was willing to raise their hand and had a certain skill set. Now we have to make sure that, we are geared up to be able to do the next thing. It's
mm,
adding new roles. It's increasing your burn rate. It's being able to shape things in such a way that they will be more resilient at scale. And that requires some work because the company you built that made $1 million, the company we have now is not the same company when you get to 10 million. And it's certainly not the same company when you get to 50 million.
right.
Right. So with that in mind, you have to look at your team. You got to look at workflows. A lot of things will change, but what will not change is the heart of OpiAID. I will not let that happen. Like the culture that we've built, it's really simple. We respect one another. We love our neighbors,
Mm,
period. That will not change because there's no amount of money that's going to buy out my desire to make sure that those things remain true.
mm,
How they're executed will change.
right.
It'll change and will need to change in order to adapt to the market and the climate, the ever shifting climate in order to be successful. So I'm really excited about that change. Unlike most sane human beings, I like change, and I realize not only is it growth, but it's exciting.
Mm,
I don't need to know everything. I'm quick to make these decisions and I will stick with what I say and I'll back down. And I feel like I've given pretty good gut for feeling things out. That's not to say that I don't make mistakes.
right.
I'm still human. The thing is, we've got a great team around us too that are all part of the decision-making body too, going
Right.
there together.
Yeah. What are you most excited about when you think about the future of opiate?
When you say that, 'cause I'm more than just a visual person. I see things playing in my head like a video. And like, even as you were asking that question, like I heard someone speaking in the background and their words were becoming text and it was a testimonial. That's what I'm most excited about. I want to hear stories of people being delivered from their dependence, from these shackles, like their personal story of how something that they didn't realize had any power gave them more power, gave them a voice, and seeing people, put their lives back together again. I'm more excited about that than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just having those endless stories coming out of people are like, this just made such a significant role in my life. That's honestly the thing I'm most excited about.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because most businesses are very transactional. The service that you're providing is transformational. You're helping people's lives and improving their decision making in the future. It's very inspiring
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think
Yeah.
every business is important though, because some people say to me, they're like, oh, your business saved lives and mine doesn't. That's not the point.
Yeah.
We all have something to contribute in our own way, that makes the world a better place. And plus, starting with the end in mind, there are certain byproducts that speak to the process and that other things are going right. And I'll give you an example of that. So if people are giving testimonials, it means technology works. And if they're using it, it means that it was profitable enough that we could get it in the hands of more individuals to create more testimonies. So a lot of things have to work before you get, hearing the beautiful story of someone's life transformed. Here's how I know my personal life is going to be transformed. This is really simple but funny. Is I know that I have arrived when I get a bacon button. Let me tell you about my bacon button, because I've thought about this. I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm literally going to have an easy button with a picture of bacon on it beside my nightstand. And when I wake up and I reach over and hit my bacon button, within 5 minutes, someone's walking in that door with 3 strips of hickory smoked thick cut bacon.
Okay.
And when that happens, I know that everything else in my life is where I wanted it to be.
Huge bacon fan.
Yeah, I like bacon, but it's also just a testimony that if someone's actually walking in the room with bacon 5 minutes later,
Right.
there's a couple things probably going right in the background in order to allow that to be a reality.
So I want to go back to the data set that you're collecting. So you've got one of the biggest databases of user data, right? Can that be used for other purposes outside of just opiates? Like, do you see your business model expanding and providing treatment for other things other than opiate type uses? For example, if these biomarkers that you're collecting can be analyzed using patented technology, can they be applied to other treatment options?
So yes, the technology can be used for other diseases. OpiAID specializes in substance use disorder. So we'll help individuals with any type of substance use disorder and offer insights for those who are being treated for a certain type of behavioral diagnosis as well, commingling with substance use disorder. It's important we stay focused.
Right.
Our expertise, our unique selling proposition, everything is in alignment with substance use disorder. So we stay focused, we become a spear to the heart of the monster. However, I do believe that there is opportunity to partner with other groups who can leverage our data and our proprietary systems to significantly change the treatment of pain, chronic pain. Like, we've identified algorithms where if someone's being treated for chronic pain, that you see a substance use disorder developing when no one realizes, not even the person taking the pain medication.
Right.
So early detection before it even happens of a diagnosed substance use disorder. I believe that's 100% within our wheelhouse. Leveraging the data to make better pain medication, absolutely within the wheelhouse. And one really interesting piece is that you can take our trial design and the way we structure this technology, copy and paste it perfectly over to Parkinson's disease.
Interesting.
I mean, it is a perfect fit. And in fact, the folks at Karolinska Institute in Sweden, they were really interested in working with us, and we literally could have copy and pasted it and done it there, which is the largest research institution in the world for behavioral health and substance use-based research. We could have done that a year and a half ago, but we just didn't have the funds to get that in motion. But yeah, there's a lot of interplay with our data and being able to use it to have more efficient clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies, have stronger biomarkers for the development of other biomarkers related to pain and Parkinson's disease, but we don't have the bandwidth to boil the ocean.
Got it. So what does it look like in the future for you? Like, what's the exit strategy? Obviously, you're looking to raise funds from the VC market in the near future. What's the next 2 to 3 years look like for you?
Sure. So I'm building a company that I could run for 20 years and documenting it, everything along the way, with the idea that I'd be excited and have fun running this for the next 20 years. But if 3 years from now, somebody comes along, that they'll be able to buy a company that they can be excited about too, and everything's well documented, and they could take over the next day and feel comfortable doing so because there ain't no gotchas in the background.
Mhm.
Everything's well documented. With that in mind, over the next few years, what I want to do is I want to write 1 to 2 SBIRs per year, phase 1, phase 2. I want to take a couple more algorithms through FDA. I want to get us to about 25 million in ARR over the next 2 to 3 years and be able to say that we're significantly impacting our neighbors and have testimonials to prove it. And we're already talking to and working with folks that have the ability to acquire opioid.
Mhm.
So we're building some of the cake with them in that, it will already be congruent with their processes, their delivery, their infrastructure. So them purchasing opioid will be well within the wheelhouse. Here's my belief. Again, making things simple. We're raising a child. Opioid is like a child. It's not an infant anymore. It's like maybe an early teenager, where they're smart enough to do certain
Right.
things and maybe not wise enough to not choose certain paths. Eventually, we're going to have to send this child to college. And I'm not capable of teaching a college age student. Like, I don't think that's in my wheelhouse. What I mean by that is at one point, this child's going to grow up and be 18, 20, whatever, and going to leave the house. And when that happens, it's going to be a larger company acquiring us who can take it to the next level, who has the distribution, who has the financial wherewithal, who has contractual relationships with these large groups that can take it to the next level. And I'm excited about that. Doesn't make me nervous. I think it's a wonderful thing. So, and that could happen the next 2 to 3 years, or it could be 7 years from now. And that would be okay too, because we're going to be having fun and impacting lives along the way. We've got a 10-year plan and I've got a 2-year plan. So depending on which way the winds go and the market goes and the opportunities, but it all come down to the true north question is, will this help my neighbor? Even on a purchase, will this help my neighbor? And if the answer is yes, even if I feel like I have more gas in the tank, I'll still sell it if that's what all of our investors want. And that's ultimately what's going to be best for our neighbor.
That's great. So looking forward, if there's anyone listening to this podcast that may have family members dealing with this issue, how can they recommend your technology to their clinician?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. First thing I would say is that if you or a loved one that you care about is struggling with substance use disorder, there's hope. That's the first thing, that there's hope. This isn't hopeless. You're not the only one who's suffering. There are a lot of people who are suffering, even though this is a disease of isolation, that the opposite of addiction is community, and that opioid is building a digital bridge to community. That's truly it. What I would say with regards to opioid is that if you are in treatment for substance use disorder and you're struggling, call your local clinic, all your local providers, ask them if they utilize opioid. If they don't, ask them why. Why don't you? Right? And often for areas that we don't have connections to, that's how it happens. They ask their clinicians, say, hey, why don't we have this? And they go on my website and say, well, what is this? Can we talk? And then we do a demo and we walk through it. And if it's a fit, we onboard them. Yeah, that's the best way. Ask your clinician, ask your provider, do you offer opioid? If not, why?
Right. Why wouldn't they? That's the
Why
question.
that is
Okay.
honestly, it really is a question. Without sounding any sort of ways, there aren't solutions that are data driven that provide this. We're the only company in the world that's able to do this with biometrics, the only one
Right.
in the world.
Right.
Why wouldn't you have this in your clinic? Why wouldn't you not make this? And it's not a shame fest. They often don't know about it. We're new. But if they don't have it or they don't know who we are, they should.
Mhm.
And soon, once the FDA clears it, like, this will be the standard of care.
So when do you suspect the FDA will be able to?
I mean, I could tell you what it would have been pre the new administration, post administration, I don't know. With the FDA, that, once we submit our interim analysis, this could be something that takes 6 to 12 months to get approved.
Okay.
there's a chance it could take longer. There's a chance it could be shorter. FDA there's going to be a lot of shifting priorities at FDA. So it's hard to predict how long things are actually going to take. What I can tell you for a fact is that FDA is putting a lot of energy into opioid. When we have FDA meetings, it's common for most companies to maybe get 2, possibly 3 people in the room. Last time I went to FDA in person, we had 16 people.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that we touch into a lot of other areas, and they're so curious about opioid that they really are getting involved. So we've got significant backing from NIH, National Institute of Health, National Institute of Drug Abuse, and they're using us as an example of how to cross this regulatory pathway and shape AI in such a way that it becomes an equitable and scalable and resilient way to address larger populations with less resources. So I'm very optimistic about our FDA pathway, particularly this first de novo. I think this is a complete slam dunk. We've de-risked this as much as any company possibly could. We spent a lot of time and thought on it. But yeah, we've got a lot more runway. I've got multiple FDA marks that we can go for, and we're going to.
Right.
Just a matter of time.
Right. Well, this has been a very exciting conversation. I really appreciate you stopping by and sharing everything about your background and your journey, and of course your future with OpiAID.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the honor of bringing me here. And I'm really hoping that this stimulates some meaningful conversations for those that are listening. And feel free to reach out to me. I want to see our city win and see our neighbors win. So thank you for bringing me on the podcast this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You appreciate it.
Amplified CEO is produced by Topsail Insider. This episode is edited by Nomadic Orca and sponsored by Cape Fear Ventures. For more information about Amplified CEO, Richard Stroupe, or Cape Fear Ventures, please contact Krista at 910-800-0111 or Krista at topsailinsider.com.